On Monday, two things were made clear. This last Monday, we came to realize that we need to take immediate action to deal with human-caused global warming. And secondly, American innovation has already given us many of the tools to do so. I know there are those who think that climate change is an issue that will only affect us in the far distant future, or that the challenge is so big we can't really do much about it. But the truth is that we are already dealing with the effects of climate change, and we have it within our power to address that in technology that already exists. Earlier this year, rainstorms and melting snow caused flooding across my state of Illinois. More than 20 counties throughout the state were placed under flood warning. As the water level of rivers continued to rise, several communities had to evacuate their homes for their own safety in Illinois. Illinois farmers know all too well that changing weather is impacting the way they farm and the crops they produce. As I speak, recovery efforts are already underway after Hurricane Michael left the Panhandle region of Florida in ruins. Our hearts go out to the families who are waking up this morning and don't know whether their loved ones are safe or whether they have a home to return to. Earlier this summer, in the western part of our country, we saw vast acreage destroyed by historic wildfires. And it's been 1 year since Hurricane Harvey hit Texas and Hurricane Maria devastated the entire island of Puerto Rico. It's obvious to anyone that natural disasters are becoming more powerful, more costly, and more deadly. And it's time we take climate change's role in causing them seriously, or it will get worse. On Monday, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a report stating that we have just over a decade, less than 10 years, to drastically reduce our carbon emissions if we want to maintain life on Earth as we know it today. It's an ominous warning, but a serious one. The UN report states that we must reduce global emissions by 45% by the year 2030 and reach net zero emissions by 2050 if we want to avoid a world where deadly storms, unbreathable air, widespread famine, and multi-year droughts become the norm. According to the national security community that we count on to keep America safe, failing to address climate change will inundate our military bases and installations. It will incite international conflicts and put our military, the men and women serving our country, at risk in terms of readiness, operations, and strategy. The fact is, no one can claim to be serious about our national security if we don't face the reality of climate change. Now, that isn't a declaration by the Sierra Club or some liberal Democratic senator. It's a declaration of our defense community. We will continue to face weakened states and unprecedented refugee migration in the decades to come if we ignore this reality. There's good news, though. We have the tools and the technology to prevent this dystopian future, and the United States can lead in this effort. America is already showing the world how to reduce emissions and grow our economy by increasing energy efficiency measures and renewable energy usage and switching to electric vehicles. Think about the gains that we've made, the progress that's been made when it comes to the fuel efficiency of the cars and trucks that we drive today. There was a time in the Senate not that long ago when Detroit automobile and truck manufacturers were in complete denial. There's just no way to hit these targets in terms of miles per gallon. We're doing it, and we see it every day. And it is the same American innovation that can power us to make far-reaching transitions in energy and infrastructure we need to limit our emissions to meet the recommendations of this United Nations panel. On Monday, the Nobel Prize in Economics was given to two Americans, William Nordhaus and Paul Romer, for their work on innovation, climate, and economic growth. Their work shows that addressing climate change can be an incredible opportunity for job growth and new investments in American competitiveness. New jobs can be created designing more efficient solar panels, wind turbines, and batteries, as well as manufacturing the components for export all over the world. Madam President, if you visited downstate Illinois, an area which is one of our most bountiful agricultural areas, you can't help but be struck by the number of wind turbines that have been built all around my state. Farmers love it because they are receiving monthly checks for those wind turbines located on their property, and the wind turbines are generating electricity for nearby communities without polluting. 20 years ago, no one would have thought of this as a serious alternative. Today it is. It's an alternative, renewable source of energy that is not going to make the world worse for future generations. There was a Paris Agreement in terms of setting global goals that all the countries in the world would sign up for to reduce carbon emissions and to work together to develop a worldwide clean energy economy. 195 countries, every country in the world, agreed to this Paris Agreement and signed on, including the United States. However, last year, President Trump decided that the United States would step away from the rest of the world, step away from our allies and trading partners, and leave this agreement. When I think about the decisions being made by this Trump administration, this may be one of the most long-term disastrous decisions he's made. To think that this great nation, with its great economy, its great technology and innovation, would step away from an agreement that every country in the world has signed to deal with our climate challenges, it's unthinkable. I hope after this week's announcement from the United Nations, at least someone in the White House will have second thoughts about this disastrous decision. We should not give up U.S. leadership and risk the world moving forward without us. If we step aside from this responsibility, others will step into our place, starting with China, leading the rest of the world outside of the United States into new technology and innovation to deal with climate change. It is clear that it's in America's best interest to take immediate action to limit our greenhouse gas emissions and face the realities of climate change head on. Will it result in a change of our lifestyle? Perhaps, but only on the margins. Is it worth it? This weekend, I'm going to get a treat. I get to visit my grandkids. They're 7 years old, twins, little boy, little girl, and I have a lot of fun with them. And I think about what I do for a living and how it might impact the world that they live in years to come. I'd like to let them know that I'm doing my part in the Senate and others are doing their part in Washington to leave them a world that they can live in, one that is not compromised by selfishness and political agendas that we see today. The livelihood of the people in my state, including the farmers in my home of Illinois, depend on us.
All time has expired.
I ask consent for 60 additional seconds.
Without objection.
The livelihoods of farmers in my home of Illinois depend on us acting and preventing an endless cycle of historic storms, floods, and droughts causing millions of dollars in damage and crop loss. We have a moral obligation to our kids and grandkids to leave future generations with a planet that is not plagued by catastrophic drought, famine, wildfires, hurricanes, and sea level rise. We have the tools and know how to do it. It's time we rise to the challenge.